Hello. Hello.
Happy Friday.
Same to you.
Thank you.
Hello. That matters.
Hello.
Hope no one minds if I snack a bit.
Nope.
Snack a bit. I'm just drinking beer. Just kidding.
I didn't know it was a happy hour meeting.
I'm at home. I drink all the time.
Because you're allowed. 10
Public
o'clock. I
meeting,
heard
Riley.
that the other day.
We're live on Channel 4. Oh, we're live on Channel 4 stream.
Let me do this then.
Maybe we just went live, Riley.
Come on, it's all good. Where's the breathalyzer? I'll take it.
I just injected myself with some bleach, so.
Hey, it's a disinfectant. It's fine.
I ate some Tide Pods.
It's fine.
Yeah, well, I just followed a flashlight.
Are we all here ready?
Kathy, we're missing Debbie, but I think we can go ahead and begin.
On record?
Okay. All right. So thanks everybody for getting together. The purpose of this is ultimately for a recommendation to the City Council. There has been quite a bit of correspondence and discussion that I've been having with our attorney, and there's a couple things that I just need to kind of clear up a little bit to make sure we all understand this. So when the City Council created the subcommittee actually consists of Councilors Hoagland, Councilor Casper, and Councilor Mark. They're the ones that are actually making the recommendation. They then assigned staff to help with that, and then asked for the input from two of our residents, Lori and Dave. And so as we go through this, we'll still be having discussions and everything, but ultimately the three councilors need to make a decision on the recommendation they will make to the City Council. It's not all of us voting on it. It's really the decision of those three to make that. So I'm going to go through and talk about what we put together, and then open that up for discussion, and then finally our three councilors need to make a decision on how they want to go forward. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Since our last meeting, we've put together for you guys, actually it's a two-part plan. There's a couple of other things that we've added that will go directly to the City Council for consideration. But the first item of these is the buying of goods and services from the businesses. As we went through the discussion and we looked at separating the lodging industry from the non-lodging industry, one of the things that kind of became a bit apparent to me was that the funding may be inadequate. And so what I am proposing to you today, after consulting with Ed on his budget, is that instead of $500,000, we put in $635,000, which is the equivalent of 1 month's, at this time of the year, 1 month's transient room tax that the city receives. We also know that we have not nearly enough money to be able to help everybody. And so what in the document I sent to the City Council, I left the numbers blank. The one that I think I sent to you had some numbers in it. My proposal on this is that $400,000 of that $635,000 go towards the non-lodging industry businesses, and $235,000 goes towards the lodging industry businesses. Now, there's a couple of reasons for that. First of all, even though there's not enough funds, when you look at the lodging industry businesses, The other thing that we have in this qualification is that the amount is based on the amount of money that was paid in 2000, the average amount of money that was paid in 2019 the average amount of gross room rent that was received in 2019. We have that information because it comes with the tax receipts we receive for the transient room tax. And the amounts that anybody, that gross room rent went from anywhere from $50 to about $10,000. And so what we looked at is that this proposal would grant to the businesses the amount is that amount, and so if it up to $5,000. Okay, we further define the businesses that are eligible to those that in the lodging industry, to those that were closed down by the counties and the cities, and in the county order number 32385, it defines it basically as the hotels, motels, RV parks, private campgrounds, and short-term rentals defined as rentals of a duration of less than 30 days. We also put in it that the vacation rental dwellings preference is given to owners whose primary residence is in Lincoln City. Okay. And then, of course, we have no chains or management companies are eligible for that. And then we also added, based on our discussions, that qualifying expenses have to be business expenses only. Now, I sent to you a couple hours ago an application, one for the lodging businesses, one for the non-lodging businesses, for you to review. As I look at the lodging business, I realize there's one bit of information that we would have to put in, and that's just to confirm where their primary residence is. That's one bit of information that we don't have on that. Courtney will need to add into that. For the non-lodging businesses, they have to, in both cases, I forgot to mention this, they have to have an occupational tax permit. We further defined who would be eligible to this by citing governor's orders, executive orders 2007 and 2012, which then lists those businesses which have been closed or their businesses have been severely curtailed. We kept in it that they have to have a physical or storefront presence. There's a lot of discussion about one individual business, D-Dogs. And then that led to a little bit more about other businesses that didn't have a physical storefront. I left it the way it was for you guys to consider because, quite frankly, once you start going down a road of exceptions, it becomes really, really difficult to draw the line as to where to stop. An easy line is you need to have a physical building, a storefront presence in the city. Once we start going with exceptions, it makes it difficult. You had talked about having preference for a number of employees. There's no magic number in here, but I put in 6. And then, of course, national chains are not eligible. A couple of other things that we did on it is that I left the grant amount at $5,000 because that's what you had discussed in your meeting. I know there was additional discussions. Should we lower it? Should we choose another amount? But at this point, I've just left it at $5,000. And then we further defined that you had talked about having one grant per business owner. I further defined that based upon some of our own ordinances, that also includes immediate family members, and then defined what an immediate family member was as well. And they also have to be available for qualifying expenses. Now, one other part of this that you need to be aware of, originally this was, and that's the second part, originally this was just going to go to the city council. However, we realized that there is a that this applies also to our lodging industry and non-lodging industry of businesses that are affected. The city is also considering an additional economic aid part of Part 2 of this, which is an additional $635,000 to go to waive water bills. And so one of the things that we added into, these are not mutually exclusive. They're meant to help both residents and businesses. And the $635,000, if every household qualified, would cover about 89% of all of our water users. Not everyone will, of course, qualify on this. So we added a paragraph right under the business and contact information on the two applications that said, if you are successful in receiving the grant, you will also receive the waiver on your water bill. And it will also be based upon, and the amount will be what is actually owed at the time the application is received. Okay, and for our businesses, that's about an additional $160 to $180 that's currently owed as of yesterday. So that's where we stand. So for all of us, except Riley and Judy and Rick, we are to give them our input on what we think ought to be changed, what changes, and then ultimately the three of them need to deliberate and make a determination on what they want to recommend.
So
Okay, Rick, I see your hand is up, and then Riley, your hand is up.
Couple things, and first, I kind of want to apologize in that some of the email exchanges that we had, which I responded to during the week, and I did have a little chat with the city attorney and realized that, just so you all understand, while it's fine for the non-council members to be sending emails around, it's not okay for council members to be responding sort of en masse, because that creates a problem with public information not being open to the public, and also gives the appearance that we're holding a serial meeting, which is not legal. So it's fine for everybody else to be sending those emails and responding, but it's not okay for the council members to respond to those. And I was guilty of that, so just wanted to point that out. So a couple of questions I had on the application. I like the idea on the non-lodging form that a possible recipient would say what their monthly gross income is, and that would cap their grant. But I noticed that we don't do that for the non-lodging business. It just allows for up to $5,000. And I wonder what the thinking is there. And if we put a cap on all the businesses, does it help spread the money around a little bit? So that's one thing. And then the other question I had was that there are some shops in town that maybe they're, and I'm thinking the antique shops and gift shops and rock shops, to be specific, that I don't know if those fall into the definition here of eligible businesses, and maybe they're not affected by the governor's declaration, but the reality is people aren't coming to town, so those places must be losing business. So I don't know how maybe I'm wrong about those sorts of businesses not fitting the definition, but that was a concern I had. That's what I had.
In the answer to your first question, the second question is really kind of more of where you want to go. But the answer to your first question was really ease. We have all of the information we need on the from the lodging industry to determine how much it will be. We don't need them to supply us any information because it's already been given to us through through processing their taxes. The businesses, we don't have any of that information. And so it was just a matter of ease.
So Ron, I have a question on the waiving outstanding water and sewer bills. So are those certain months that we're waiving, or it says outstanding? So does that mean they haven't paid it and now they're not having to pay it? But what if somebody has paid it and could have it waived? I don't know. I'm confused on that.
Right now, it is what is outstanding on their bill or what the outstanding amount will be on their upcoming bill.
So like next month's bill?
Yeah, so if I've paid my bill now and I have nothing owed, the next bill will be the amount that is waived. But if I have an outstanding bill now and I haven't paid it, that's the amount.
Okay, and that is just across the board for everybody. They don't have to apply for that?
No, they still have to apply for it.
Okay.
What you don't have here is an application for the residents. You have it for the businesses because if you qualify for the grant, you automatically qualify for the water waiving.
Okay, so what if we've got the business owner who leases their storefront? They would not be the one paying the sewer and water, I wouldn't think. Wouldn't that be a landlord?
No, not necessarily. We have a lot. Renters pay their water bills.
Okay.
You're saying it's typical for business owners, though they're leasing the building, to have the water bill in their name.
I believe so. I'll check on that for certain.
So then on the occupancy tax permit, where do home-based businesses fall in that? If they do business out of their home, is that considered a storefront or not?
My interpretation is not.
Okay, so they would not need a occupancy tax permit or?
Yeah. However, let me qualify that a little bit. The first test that they have to fall in line with is they have to meet the definition as defined in Executive Orders 2007 or 2007 and 2012. So if I had a nail salon, which is listed in that, and it's in my house, yes, I would qualify for that. If I had a nail salon and it was in Newport, no, I wouldn't qualify for that, even though my mailing address is here.
Okay, so follow up to that on the
big step is they have to meet the two executive orders.
Okay, so what if there is a business listed on here that should have been closed but didn't remain closed? Are we going to verify any of that?
That's the information in the application that they have to also establish that they have been affected by the closure or by these emergencies. And it includes provide supporting documentation.
Okay, so would like just decreased sales because of COVID-19 fall under that?
Yes, but I don't know what amount decreased sales actually means, but yes,
I know.
They have been affected by it.
Okay.
I mean, for me, being able to show like what they lost, like last year's tax, if they're managing, so I would start with the lodging. You rented it, you've had to have been in business for at least a year, so you should have last April's information. So I feel like that should be a requirement of showing last year's April of what you could have lost. I don't see anything of like specifically what the document is that needs to be shown, but I feel like that's important. And it says in there no national chains, but it doesn't say interstate chains. So are we going to stay local business, Lincoln City business management companies that are interstate? There are companies that manage vacation rentals here that are not just local. So are we trying to differentiate? We say no national, but if they have businesses in 3 states of the same business, are we going to support that business? So I think that is something that we need to talk about, and, you know, providing the documentation of last year's completed books, you know, that you have done this and this is your earnings that you've lost, you know. Yeah, so there's that for the, and then what percentage, you know, we're splitting it 400 and 235 with another 635 of the water bill, right?
Right.
But what percentage of the businesses are short-term rentals and not short-term rentals? You know, is it the same split of money? You know, 400, whatever the percentage is, 2 to 1 are short-term, are storefronts 2 to 1 for businesses, or we have it flipped? We're paying 2 to 1 in the businesses that are half as much as the other.
I don't know the percentage of the businesses to, well, actually I kind of do. There are many more in the lodging industry.
Right, but we're paying twice as many businesses with half as much money, is what I'm saying.
Well, this is the rationale we looked at. There are many more lodging industry businesses than there are other businesses.
Right.
And one of the reasons for that is that there are many more vacation rental dwellings within the lodging business than there are. If you took the vacation rental dwellings out, then it flips itself. And so when I looked at how to make that split, it really became based upon the fact that so many of our lodging businesses have less than $5,000 in gross room rents for the average of the year.
Oh, for the year?
It's for the year, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're only anticipating them maximizing, you know, whatever, what? I don't know.
Whatever it is divided by 12.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
like I said, I can't go back and say necessarily month by month because we're paid quarterly.
Sure.
But we do know, but we have all the information on how much we receive.
Right. Right. Okay. Well, okay. And then for the D-Dogs, or something that doesn't have a storefront, if it's been in the same location for a year, just like any other business, I don't think that should preclude it. Like, I get storefront, but if they're serving customers and they have a same location, I feel like that could be considered the same as a storefront. I hear people, what they're saying, but, you know, they've been in the same place too. So, and I don't know if he's even going to apply, but, you know, I think there's one other food cart place, but, you know, I feel like if they've been in the same place and they serve customers like a storefront, they should be considered.
Right.
I'll ask more
Let's see,
questions.
I think we had Judy next, Dave, and then Judy, and then Dave.
Oh, I only need one Judy. I had a question about the water bill. Is it just a one-time only, or is it, suppose this goes into June or July? Would that keep going then, that water bill payment?
No, this is a one-time only, and to consider doing it again, the council would have to vote on it.
Okay, so it's a one-time payment.
Mm-hmm.
All right, yeah. The other question is business expenses. How are we defining those?
You know, I've left that pretty loosely, that's kind of a little bit based upon your discussion. How much detail do you want me to get into the business operations? And what I took from the conversation was don't go too deep.
Yeah, my only question was, would it include rent or, mortgages or leases? I think that would be a business expense.
It would if the rent was paid for your business.
As opposed to?
Your house.
Okay.
Unless your house was the business.
Okay. All right. The other thing is supporting documents. We were just talking about that. Isn't there something called profit and loss sheet that could be provided, or your financial statement like we had for the nonprofit grants, which would not be released to the public at all.
Again, I don't know that it is not available to the public. Almost everything that comes to us will be public record. I've left that pretty vague because we have businesses that are just at a multitude of levels of sophistication. And so I've left that up to the business owners to determine what kind of supporting documentation to provide.
Okay.
And it should be pointed out, when it comes to public information, if we're going to err, it's going to be erring on the side of giving it to the public instead of not giving it to the public. So some businesses may not want to provide, I mean, the easiest thing to do is to provide your tax documents, but I don't know how many businesses actually want to provide their tax documents.
So I was just thinking maybe we could give a list of potential supporting documents so people wouldn't have to scratch their head or call all the time, and just give examples of things we would accept.
Lori, how hard is that to do? I need your help in knowing what kind of documents would be the right documents.
Yeah, I think it needs to be very clear what is expected, not leave it up in the air. I don't know, maybe tax documents or P&Ls. Everybody should have a P&L.
And can I chime in?
Yeah.
Many of the applicants, probably most, if not all of the applicants for these loans will have also been in the process of applying for one or both of the SBA packages that are out there. And they will have already gathered their P&Ls to compare to prior year and that sort of thing. So I think they've got that stuff that Lori's mentioning locked and loaded, right, Lori? And they'll be able to resubmit it. And I see that Councilor Mark has noted Schedule C. Schedule C is already something that self-employed persons are using to show their income when it comes to the impact that COVID has had when they're applying for the PPP loan. So that's another example of a document that would be helpful to you in judging you and your panel, and also easy for the applicant to provide.
So Dave, would you be able to provide me with a list of what those kind of documents should be?
Sure, and I'd be happy to work with Lori on that too, just to make sure that it's including what she thinks ought to be there. But yeah, and I would basically, to provide that list for you, I'd be borrowing liberally from what the SBA has set out in terms of appropriate documents. And we could scrub some of the ones that are typically like C corporation and larger outfits, but yes, we'd be happy to help with that.
Yeah, I would need some help with that. Okay.
I have two more questions quickly. The other one is the businesses that have been in business for one full year. I think I know of one business specifically that had just started. They remodeled, they revamped the whole place. And I think they'd been there like 6 months, and then boom, this pandemic came along. So that would, I guess, sort of leave them out. I know you put the cutoff line somewhere. And the other thing was maybe for council in the future to discuss a lesser amount is an option. You know, 3,500 instead of 5,000 might reach more businesses, and help give more relief to everyone. That's my end of my questions.
Okay.
Well, and Judy, can I just
Ron,
throw
I have
else in too? Sorry. What if they don't stay open? What happens at that point too? What if they get the grant and close a month later?
Well, I just threw it out there. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
My feeling on that is that's a risk we take. You know, if Ken Murphy, our emergency preparedness director, is accurate, we could see as much as 40% of our businesses not survive this. So I don't know that that should be the basis for making a decision, because that's, to me, is kind of gambling at its very best. We have no idea who's going to make it and who's not.
Isn't the idea to provide relief right now, because these are business expenses that are hanging over their heads, correct?
It is, but if somebody is operating on a margin that's so close that $3,500 is going to make or break them, that's going to be tough.
Yeah. Okay. Just.
Okay. So Ron, this is Dave. I had a couple things.
Okay.
For what it's worth, I'm just going to echo my emails from earlier in the week that apparently weren't violating any rules. So thanks for that, Mr. Appicello. But I agree with Riley. I think that to me, a business like D-Dogs is an employer, and I just want to echo that again. That I wish there was a way we could work around that exception. I'm still not convinced. Also, something I emailed that single owner, VRDs should necessarily be eligible. I think of this from a standpoint of employers first, and the folks who are faced with unemployment, and that we might be able to assist. And so I'm still a little perplexed by their inclusion in this, and the fact that they make up so much in the way of numbers that if you fund the VRDs, you won't have anything left for the lodging facilities that employ people. And then I think that those non-lodging businesses that you spell out the paragraph from the governor's executive order. I mean, it's exactly the wording that they use, that as Councilor Mark pointed out, doesn't include certain categories like rock shops or other particular businesses that Lincoln City has. I see where the language came from because they were called out in the executive orders, but at the end of the day, we know that every business in Lincoln City has been affected by the stay-at-home order of the governor and also by the county and city ordinance against short-term rentals. And so it's impacted everyone categorically. And so I guess I question the need to even call that out, that list that says you're either on this list or you're not, depending on your business type. So food for thought. And then my final point is, yesterday at 10 a.m., the emergency board in Salem, a group of legislators got together and, approved basically $35 million for small business. Well, 10 of it is specifically for small business emergency support. And it's still being hashed out by Business Oregon. I tried to get some information this morning, but we don't have a fact sheet or FAQs yet, but it's coming. And there's going to be a local match to that and making some of those funds available in communities like ours. And I just wonder if we might regret spending all this money now and then realizing, we could have matched that and leveraged it into twice that if we'd waited. So I don't know how long we'd wait. We might want to reach out to someone like a Representative Gomberg, who's on that, who is a part of those conversations. And wait for some direction from Business Oregon, hopefully in the next 72 hours. But just wanted to throw that out there as well. I think that's promising. And it might not be something that impacts this program at all. It might just provide an extra layer of support. I just want to mention it. $10 million is going to go quickly in a state the size of Oregon. That's all I'm saying. Thank you.
Let's see. Councilor Mark, I think we have you back on, and then Councilor Casper, your hand is still up.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, the devil's in the details, isn't it? So I think I think one reason I like the idea of requiring a storefront, and it's not to pick on D-Dogs, but it's to pick on me. It's to pick on people who've got a home business. And I think, Laura, you asked about this. I mean, I'm obliged to have an occupational tax permit. So is my partner. She's got a law practice from home that essentially is not affected by this. In fact, if anything, we might gain from it, to be honest, over time. It's supplemental income. We have no employees. I've said this before. That's why I wonder, and this goes to Dave's point about the VRDs, because I kind of have a similar concern. And I had thrown out maybe in an email that we require the businesses to have at least one employee, which would kick out, I think, the places that don't have a storefront, that it's just a little family thing that they do. And again, would narrow the pool a bit so that the money, could go to more likely to the businesses that really need it. And my other sort of thought along that line was to Judy's point about considering 3,500 instead of 5,000. I think we could address that by going to the monthly gross income number, which I understand, Ron, your point that you've got that number for the lodging facilities. You don't have it for non-lodging. We would just have to trust them to, I don't know how you pick out what your typical April is, you know, that might be a real problem, I guess. But yeah, I guess it could even be your monthly average over the course of the year. But those all might be ways to spread the pool out a little bit. And I guess that's what I'm concerned about. Let me just see if I had something else in my notes here. In a broader sense, Ed and I talked about this earlier today because I had questioned, you know, I think it would be pretty easy to pick out certain individual businesses that we'd say, do they really need this or deserve it, or is this really right to give it to them? And that's maybe not the best way to look at it. And and this also goes to the question about what if a business closes? Well, I mean, what we're doing is recirculating money back into the economy, and whether a business closes or not, we will have accomplished that to some small degree. And so that alone might make it all worthwhile. And, you know, rather than worrying about every little individual nub, maybe just the sense that we're figuring out a way to get money back to people makes this worthwhile. So I don't know. That might contradict something I just said earlier. That's kind of my thought.
You know, there's one thing that I think I'm missing on this as I read through it. And one of the provisions that we discussed as a staff on this, as far as trying to make sure that the right people get it, and I think I may have left it out of this, is that Tony and Courtney, you're going to have to help me on this one. We had looked at whether or not, oh no, I'm sorry, this was for the water. If you owned a second home, would you be eligible for the water waiver? And the answer was no, you're not. And so that may be somebody who has a second home here, or maybe someone who owns a second home somewhere else, but is a resident in Lincoln City. So if you want to change this and broaden the definitions, there's a couple. Well, first of all, as far as the physical storefront presence, I'll need a couple of suggestions on how to change the language of that so it broadens it out. The second thing that the second thing is that I think it is very helpful to keep the language of the executive orders in there. But if we want to expand that a little bit, that's okay. We just need to look at how to expand it. We could simply put retail establishments as following all of these other things. And then anybody who has a retail establishment, all they need to do is provide the supporting documentation to show the evidence that they were affected. The biggest concern that I have in this is the judgment that we may end up having to make as to who has actually been affected by this. That could be the hardest part. What is the significant effect of this virus? And is it a loss of 5% of your business? Is it a loss of 95% of your business? That may be the hardest thing to do.
Well, and Ron, we're asking them to write a 500 or less than 500 word essay. So is that going to be kind of the deciding factor? What's written in that essay?
Maybe. If it is just, yes, I have been affected, yeah, and then they support how they were affected. If you're asking us to weight it and say, well, you have been affected more than somebody else, then it becomes just very much more complicated.
Judy's had her hand up for a little while.
Oh, I'm sorry, Counselor?
Can't hear you, Judy.
Judy, you're muted.
Still can't hear you. Mute me, unmute me. Go to your picture in the bottom left. There's that red little, click the red thing in the bottom left. Nope, still not. There you go.
Oh, you were all gone. You were missing.
Now we got you.
You're missing an action. Okay, regarding the local match, I think as we go along, the local match might be significant, but right now we need to get more money out there, and we're not sure, you know, how many businesses will apply, like Dave said. But I'd hate for us to wait for the wheels to move before we initiate our assistance. What else was that? The definition here, the eligibility list on the executive order. Ron, you just mentioned something. A simple way to say it might just add at the end other Lincoln retail establishments, and that would include, you know, all the ones we haven't mentioned in this list. That's it.
Okay. Any other comments before I kind of summarize and then ask our counselors to deliberate a little bit on this?
Well, could we leave it at just must have occupational tax permit and take out the physical storefront? And then if there is a home-based business that has lost a lot of revenue, you know, that normally sells out of their home and does business out of their home and has been really affected by this, then they're going to have to prove that.
In a way, you know, how I would love to see us use technology really, really well here and provide like a drop-down menu of my business has been 100% to 75% affected, 74 to 50% affected, and then therefore that way. So there's a priority of like severity. And then in that drop-down menu, because we're going to have somebody looking at all this, and why not use the system to like classify this, and I have lost, you know, $5,000 at 95% of my business, having inputs for them to be able to do that. So the system, through a simple click, could like push them over into a more significant package deal or something like that. I feel like, you know, if someone's reading it, then that is offered up for interpretation, and then we have like the Small Business Administration giving the money to the Fortune 500 companies. You know, I don't want that kind of feeling to happen with our local businesses. And like, look, we care, and you're 95% affected at maximum $500,000 or whatever it is, and then the supporting documents of simply my April 2019 documents compared to sales of April, whatever, you know, whatever that is, right? So we're gonna, so that it's direct, easy like that. You're on it, you're on it. You know, you're negatively affected, you're negatively affected. I'm not the most effective business person. I don't keep track of stuff, but I'm also not trying to get $5,000 of credit either. You know, there are people who are really, really struggling. So I feel like if we have a way in which that it's like just easy, you know, you have the two documents, last year's, this year's, and you're at this percentage and this percentage, you know, 4 questions. And why are you negatively affected? I don't know. Just that you are negatively affected, and here's the money, because now we start getting to feelings and emotions and things like that. It's like simply, it's negatively affected to this amount at this capacity for this much money. And that's it.
Okay. Councilor Mark?
Yeah, I did have in the back of my mind that there could be home businesses without a storefront who are really hammered, and maybe that's their big income. So I am a little concerned about that. So something that Councilor Hoagland just said made me think that maybe maybe we could just say within the application that you know, we're going on a first come first served basis, but maybe we could say priority would be given to businesses with a larger percentage loss that can demonstrate a larger percentage loss. And so, you know, if we're comparing, when it comes time to comparing applications, if we've got a whole bunch that are, 70, 80, 90% loss, and then some that are 5, 10, 15%. Well, we know which ones we're going to go to first, and the money's only going to go so far. So that might be a way to get a handle on who gets what. I don't know.
All right. Okay, Counselor Casper, your hand is back up.
Yeah, it is. I just have a clarifying statement here. To me, on this form, it wasn't clear that the water bill was a one-time payment. I don't know if anybody else read it that way, but if it could be clearer, even I would understand it, that would be good.
Okay. All right. Lori, your hand's up.
Yeah, just one quick thing. Can we talk about the timeline? I'm a little nervous about the May 4th deadline, because if this gets approved on the 27th, it gets flushed out on the 28th. That only gives, a couple of weekdays, and then it's due the next Monday. So I don't know. I think that's a really tight timeline to get applications in.
Okay. How much time do you think we will need, or they will need?
Well, exactly. When would you anticipate actually having it available?
We would start getting the word out the next day.
Okay, so on the 28th. But is it developing a form, a drop-down form, once all of this gets flushed out?
Yeah, that may be that might take us a little bit more, a couple of extra days, if we expand what the application form will look like.
Yeah, I definitely like that idea that they're picking, and it kind of leads you down a road that's not left open for interpretation. But how about if we left it open for the following week? If it's out by Wednesday, close it the following Friday.
Well, the one thing this may change, then that's possible. We know we don't have enough money to cover everybody, the applications we will get. So one of the criteria we were looking at is, if you met all these conditions, then it's a first come, first serve. However, if we're now going to be changing that so that we are doing a greater evaluation to determine who's been harmed the most, then it's not as necessary to get it in, right this day.
Yeah, I mean, I think having the percentage more than the dollar amount be the most important. I have been 100% negatively affected, period, to 75. That is absolutely, and they have the verifiable documents, last year's, this year's, or the last 2 years, or whatever, it doesn't matter. But then you have those comparisons, and then that is who gets it first, the most severely affected. I mean, that makes sense to me. Why would you have 50 businesses that only lost 10% of their business versus the 5 that lost 100% of the business? For me, that is just, you're trying to support the community. So, and then showing that, I think that number one, importance, and then number two, to the maximum, $4,000, $3,500, to council, whatever. But then, and then having that thing, because this is such a small town and that already people feel like there's favoritism. And I just, for once, let's just do it on facts and numbers and just let it be, straight across the board. I don't understand, and then that way we're not, and then we ourselves, the city employees, aren't at risk of like, oh, because your cousin so-and-so. No, it's because the document says that he lost 75% of his business compared to last year.
Okay.
So another point too, how are we going to get the word out? Because that's another part of this.
Every one of us here in this committee, I know, has been talking to everybody as much as possible. This is being watched.
Well, we will be using the tools that we have through our billing systems and our tax permitting system, or occupational tax permitting system, to get the word out.
So is that separate emails? We don't have time to mail things.
No, it'll be through emails, publications, Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah.
We'll find multiple ways to get it out.
Okay.
Is Ed?
All right, Ed?
I just wanted to back up what Riley was just talking about. Do we need numerical scoring on this when it comes back? If you look at the ELC grants, the tourism grants, we assign numbers and weights to each thing we're looking at. We just did the same thing with the artist selection for the public art project that the Public Arts Committee recommended. If you can point to scores and numbers, it makes it a little bit easier to justify than just making a call.
Well, let's not go there for that. That's what we as the staff will take care of. What we need to just from this group is just know what the parameters are, and then we can build the evaluation documents based on what the parameters are. We'll be here all day if we go into that part of it.
Are there costs associated with the business of the SBDC membership and the Chamber of Commerce membership? Is there a fee?
There's no fee at all for SBDC services. There are some classes that we charge money for. We're not charging anything this term, but but now that I have the mic, Riley, for that question, and I'm sure Lori can address the chamber dues, but the on the scoring thing, and again, I totally know we're not going there, Ron, but remember that everybody on the lodging side is going to have 100% impact. Boom, my entire month is gone, and from March 18th or whatever that date was to present, compared to last year, it's nil versus whatever I had last year. And so that isn't going to be the deciding factor for that category of businesses if you decide to score it on other means. Anyway, I'll leave it there.
Lodging is actually the easiest to do because those, that's the easiest to do, and it's the easiest to determine how much. Okay, so let me summarize. Let's see. Lori, did you have a comment? Your hand's still up?
I just want to say, well, the reason why is because I'm saying maybe we could make the businesses also be a member of the Chamber of Commerce and the SBDC to receive the money, be a part of these two organizations, just as a way to get like membership and say, hey, here's the opportunity. We're going to give you the money and sign up for the Chamber of Commerce and the SBDC, and we're all together here. And really bring it all together with the Chamber, the city, and the SBDC, and I'll say, hey, we're all in this. Here's what we're doing.
Hey, I love that idea.
I'd have to seek some legal advice to find out if we can force people to do that to get city money.
Yeah, of course, but
I mean, I'd have to find that out.
But that's just as a way.
Okay.
They want free money, don't they?
Okay, so counselors, as you begin to deliberate this, here's a few things of the notes that I have taken down and tried to put them into the categories as far as the program goes. First item of consideration is the split of the funds. What is before you is $400,000 for the $400,000 for the non-lodging business and $235,000 for the lodging business and $400,000 for the non-lodging business. Okay. By the way, 400,000 divided by 5,000 is 80 businesses. Okay. They must have been affected by the emergency declaration. They must have a city occupational tax permit, and then we talked just briefly about and be in business for 1 year. Okay, I'm working through the lodging industry right now.
Does insurance mean anything?
Have to have been, they have to be a lodging industry as defined in the Lincoln County Order Number 32385, which are hotels, motels, RV parks, private campgrounds, and short-term rentals defined as rentals of a duration of less than 30 days. Their facility must be located in Lincoln City. For vacation rental dwellings, preference is given to owners whose primary residence is in Lincoln City. And then national chains and management companies are ineligible.
I still think, are we going to include multi-state businesses that are operating businesses in other states.
Under the lodging well,
I think it should be Oregon only businesses.
okay.
I mean, if you're looking at a business
That's actually, so for VRDs, that's not an issue because you can only own one in the city.
management companies are not.
Management companies are not eligible. However, a hotel chain that has just hotels in Oregon, that could be.
That's what I'm saying.
Hey, Ron, just a question. If I own a hotel and I get a Holiday Inn franchise, I'm a local businessman, it's my hotel, but I put a corporate flag on it. Does that count as a franchise business?
You would not be qualified under those circumstances.
Franchises are not part of it? Does it say franchises are not part of it?
If it says Holiday Inn, you're not qualified for it.
But does our paperwork say no franchises?
Ours says national chains.
Well, it could be a state, it could be a regional chain, it could be a statewide chain.
That's the part that you guys need to deliberate on, is that the question really is it okay to have more than one business within Oregon?
Right. Are we as the
I'm
subcommittee?
not sure how we would word that, but we'll figure that out if you want to do that.
Right, is the subcommittee gonna make that recommendation?
That's what you guys will deliberate on in just a minute.
Okay.
Ron, before you leave, Ron?
Yeah.
Are you there?
Yeah.
You just mentioned about primary residence in Lincoln City, and as I read that line, is that just for the VRD owners? That's not clear to me as I read it.
Yeah, for vacation rental dwelling, preference is given to owners of vacation rental dwellings
Okay,
whose primary residence.
okay.
Are you defining what that is?
What the primary residence is?
What preference is?
Reference to who? I mean, for what?
What is the preference?
If I have to choose between you who live here and you and Ed who doesn't,
Sure.
you would get preference.
Under what circumstances? You're gonna let 500 VRDs before 500? Are you gonna let only local owners go and then go? Or is it like one local, one out, one local, one out? I mean, that's, having preference is kind of a loose thing here. The first 100 people are out of towners with multiple homes, and they're like, well, there's no local people, so let's give them the money. I don't want that perception.
So if I have $235,000 to give and I have $700,000 in applications, the ones that have a primary residence here will get preference until the money is run out. If I run out of people that have primary residence at 150,000, then the next 85,000 would be eligible.
All right. Thank you.
I just want to say, as the experienced newspaper editor here, Ron, I totally understood exactly what you meant. I thought it was very clear the way it's written.
Okay. All right. So we were at national chains and management companies are ineligible. The discussion for the subcommittee is chains within Oregon only. Are they eligible? Okay. The next one that you had made comments about was must have a Lincoln City occupational tax permit and been in business for 1 year. And wait a minute. Okay, so that's it for the lodging industry. The non-lodging industry, we had the same things, the dollar split, business for 1 year, the discussion about Oregon chains. You had a question on qualifying business expenses. Do we want to define that?
I think we all know what business expenses are.
So, and then You have the list of the eligible businesses from the 2 executive orders, and then I heard to add to it, and other retail businesses located in Lincoln City. Okay. Under the question of must have physical storefront presence in Lincoln City, I've heard that you do not want to make that hard and fast. So the question becomes, do you want to do preference will be given to businesses that have a physical presence, or do you want me to just eliminate that provision? You seem to be okay with 6 employees or less. Preference will be given to 6 employees or less. And then we had national chains on this one as well, and it's still the same question about businesses with chains in Oregon.
I still kind of like the storefront provision, if only because we're going to be looking for ways to narrow this pool. I'm not 100% sure it's most fair, but I don't know that we can be completely fair here.
Now, the other thing that that you discussed was in the evaluation of it. We had been looking at you either qualified or you didn't. Okay, if you qualified, you got the money. If you didn't, you don't. And that would have been based on a first come, first serve. The other question for you to consider is, do you want us to measure the impact and based on the percentage or some other measure of how you were affected by the business? If you do that, it will take us longer to process it. It will not be done in a day or 2.
I don't. So, Rick, you were talking about being fair, right? And I'm trying to drive home like how you were affected. I don't think matters. It's due to COVID. You've been 75 to 100% negative, and here are my P&Ls from last year to this year. Period. It could be that's the priority. The most effective gets the money first, and that's it. And they can show that. I don't like we keep pulling into like feelings and other things, and I don't feel like that's a part of this discussion. I mean, it's not has nothing to do with emotion or whatever. 6 employees or less. You can't be part of this other things, and the degree in which you were negatively affected. I mean, I don't know. That's
okay.
Right.
Yeah, I'm thinking that given the short time that we're giving people to get these applications in, I don't know if first come, first served really comes into play here. I mean, people are going to hustle to get these in, and I don't know that I would want to give preference to someone who got it in at midnight Thursday versus 7 a.m. Friday. We're going to wait until after the deadline anyway to review these, and then we could say in the application somewhere that that the applicants will be ranked by the severity of the impact if we want to go that way. But I mean, I kind of do like that notion, if only because it'll kick out someone who, oh yeah, I'm going to make a claim because I lost $300 a month, and I'd rather it go to someone who's losing $2,000 a month. So that sort of feels okay to me.
So, counselors, the easiest way for you to go through this is just let me go down point by point, and you tell me good, or if you want to change it, the changes, and I'll include the changes we discussed. So first measure is the dollar split. $235 for lodging businesses, $400 for non-lodging businesses.
I'm good with that. I'm not really sure what the rationale is behind it. I'm a little concerned about the fact that, this is referring to, it's going to apply to the water also, but basically this is referring to money that's coming from the TRT
Yes.
fund, which basically means it all came from the lodging business to begin with. So I think we're going to get a little friction if we're splitting it so decidedly for the non-lodging. That said, I kind of like the idea of getting because, and this goes to this issue of the VRDs and some, I don't know. I think I'd rather see the money go to the retail places, the places with the storefronts, the places with employees, rather than to someone who's just, I got to carry my mortgage, my second mortgage for a month, and you know what? I can do that. So I'm okay with the split.
I'm fine with the split.
I would like to see again your reasoning that you said the 235 is, in our estimation, the amount of transient room taxes by, whatever it was per, divided by the quarter, how you got to that number, instead of it's just like, that's what sounded good. I don't want to, it sounded good, because then the is like, now we're just kind of doing whatever again. Feelings and, well, this kind of felt good. I'm not interested in that. I want to say, the VRD owners that are living in town, with a maximum $5,000 per loss, is this many people, and we feel like that's enough thing that is going to cover the amount of people that are really needing this, right? These are really needing. This isn't my fifth and sixth home. Well, I live here. I own 7 properties, 4 of which are, vacation rentals. And then what? Me, I get those all together, so there's that as well.
Well, no matter, so there's lots of arguments I can make for that. The first argument I could make is it should all go back to the lodging industry. That's one argument. I don't particularly like that argument, but it's one argument. The second argument is how many people do you want to help? If you go with a $5,000 grant, $400,000 will help 80 businesses. Okay. I don't remember if I ran the numbers on the 235. I wish I had a better way of saying this was a mathematical way of doing this, but much of it is just simply based on the discussions that we have had with you guys during our last meeting on how to help.
I'm not interested in just saying, well, here's 200,000. I feel that there's more information that we need. I'm not going to be so stringent on something and then go, well, because Ron said so. I'm not interested in that. Sorry.
What information do you need to be able to make a decision?
How many businesses in the city that are short-term rentals does the city feel there are, number one, total? We have how many businesses there are. We still have a number of self-administered, and that's the other thing. Part of that application process of the lodging, who's their management company? Put it on the application. If it says Vacasa, sorry. If it says Meredith, sorry. If it says whoever, sorry. It has to be your own thing. So who manages your property?
So I sent you the information on the number of VRDs, also on what the amount of the that they are receiving.
Was that this morning?
No, I said that last week. And also, it doesn't matter who their management company is because the money's not going to the management company. It's going to the business.
Right, I agree with that. I mean, they're not paying anything to the management companies if they don't have. I don't think if they don't have, they're not renting rooms. The management company's not an expense, so to me that's irrelevant.
You don't know? Do you know for a fact if they charge monthly fees or not, whether it's rented or not?
I don't know.
And I don't want to. I don't either. And I'm not going to say, well, homeowners aren't being charged for a zero balance.
Somebody else correct me, but they pay a percentage of their lodging charge to the management company. So if their room is sitting empty, as far as I know, they're not paying anything to the management company.
Okay,
Maybe someone else knows something better.
Nobody knows.
I'll go back and get that information, refine it a little bit more, and send it to you. Okay. We've already talked. Okay, so They must be affected by the emergency declaration. I didn't hear any objections to that. Okay. They must have a city occupational tax permit and be in business for 1 year. Are we okay with that?
Yes.
Yep.
Mr. Hoagland?
Yes.
Okay, now this is for the lodging industry specifically and not the non-lodging industry. It must be identified in Lincoln County Order 32385, hotels, motels, RV parks, private campgrounds, short-term rentals, which is defined as a rental of the duration of less than 30 days. Are you okay with that?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. The facility must be located in Lincoln City. Okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. For vacation rental dwellings, preference is given to owners of the vacation rental dwellings whose primary residence is in Lincoln City. Okay with that?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Could you say on the, no other family member or whatever, could you just say 1 grant per address? Or no, I guess you could have multiple addresses. All right.
Okay. All right. And then we had no national chain or national chains and management companies are ineligible. Then you want me to add language into it that says you are eligible if you're a chain only within the state of Oregon?
No, I don't think it should be franchise at all.
Neither.
But I guess there could be a lodging facility whose primary owner has a residence in Lincoln City, but they're part of a chain. A few years ago, I worked at the Inn at Wacoma, and the family that runs that, I don't know if they live in Lincoln City. Laura, do you know John Lee? I know they have Lincoln City connections. I know they're being very charitable to some Lincoln City people, and they've got they own 2 hotels in Lincoln City. It's the Coho and the Wacoma, and they've got one in Newport, and I know that, and they used to have one, and they probably still do, up in Anacortes. So that makes them an interstate regional chain, but they're local. I don't know what to do with that. I think the preference to Lincoln City, owned by someone with a primary residence in Lincoln City, I think that might cover us. That's going to kick out the national chains right there.
I'm sorry, say that again.
I think just putting the preference on the owner having a primary residence in Lincoln City, I think is going to narrow that pool so that we would be, I guess I don't really know. I guess I don't really know. Could you be a local resident, own the Travelodge Hotel, and we would be saying that you're not eligible because Travelodge is a national chain?
But if you're Rick, if you're a travel lodge, whether you're local manager, your expenses would be a deduction from the national business, correct? I mean,
I don't know what it means to be a local owner of a franchised business. I really don't know.
Well, usually you're a manager and you're part of the franchise. It's a business contract. You use their name.
If you're the manager, then you're not applying for this loan. It's only if you're the owner, I believe, for this grant.
You've got owned and operated hotels, so Travelodge owns the hotel. It's an O&O. And you have some where if you're the owner of the hotel and you meet certain criteria, they'll let you put the Travelodge name on it, and that's more of a franchise agreement. So there's two completely different things.
What I'll do is rework this, send it to you in both forms, and then you guys, when you get in on Monday, can look at that one on which you prefer. Okay, available amount, 1 month's average gross room income up to $5,000. This will be calculated based on the 2019 transient room tax filings.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. One grant per business owner and or immediate family, which is defined as spouse, parents, grandparents, children, adopted, half and stepchildren, siblings, in-laws, mother, father, brother, sister, daughter, and son, as part of the in-laws. Okay with that?
Yes.
Partner?
Okay. Qualifying business expense, should that be defined more, or is that okay?
Okay. I honestly think anyone in business knows what what you mean by business expense.
Councilors Casper and Hoagland, leave as is?
Well, okay, but if the question comes, rents and mortgages, is that a business expense?
That's the expense for running your storefront, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, we just all need to understand if that question comes, that's what we mean.
Okay. All right, for the non-lodging businesses, we talked about the emergency declaration being affected by that. We talked about having an occupational tax permitted business for 1 year. Must be listed in the executive orders 2007 or 2007 and 2012, and then add to it and other retail businesses located in Lincoln City. You want me to add that portion?
Or you could simplify it, Ron, and say other Lincoln City retail establishments. I don't care.
Say that again.
And other Lincoln City retail establishments.
I mean, just
You like Ron's better?
That would take care of. Well, no, I'm sorry. Maybe it will. Maybe it won't.
yeah. That probably both of those to council, I think.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Now, on the next one, we have must have a physical storefront presence in Lincoln City. I've got 3 options. That, preference will be given to a business with a physical storefront in a physical presence in Lincoln City, or eliminate it. What's your preference?
Keep it.
I don't.
Which, as is?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's my vote. Yeah.
I'm thinking require a physical storefront is what I'm leaning, but I'm not.
Yeah. I'm not there.
Riley?
Nope. It should be based on severity of loss. Period.
So preference, how about preference given?
He's saying preference to storefront over not storefront. I think it's preference to severity of loss. And we don't care if $200 is that's what they've lost, and it's all the money that they've made, and it's 100% of loss, then that's their loss. I mean, what does it matter if it somehow because they lost $5,000 is more severe? I don't think so. It's all perspective, and it shouldn't be perspective. It should be it's 75% of your business as you've lost it, and that to you is $200, and you proved it by the 2 documents. That's not.
I will put both those in there, and then let you guys take it from there. Preference will be given to businesses with 6 employees or less.
Preference or only?
I've got preference.
Yeah.
So what is your preference? Hard and fast 6 or less, or preference?
6 or less full-time, 6 or less part-time, 6 or less employees? Do family members count? How are they being paid? I mean, you know what I mean? There's a lot there that, oh, these two are only part-time and seasonal, and oh, this, you know.
Preference given to 6 full-time equivalent. What's the term they use? FTE?
FTE.
And then,
I mean, and I'm just thinking, who knows, given the parameters and the time, is it possible that we won't even get enough applications from businesses with 6 or less, and then we could give it to somebody else?
But there's so many part-time employees in the city already, it might be difficult to find 6 FTE.
no, maximum 6 FTE.
Well, maximum, okay, maximum is different.
Yeah. Part-time, great. You have 12 part-timers. I mean, what is that? You know, what is
But
that?
it's equivalent to 6 FTE, whether you have,
It depends on the hours they put in, but yeah.
but you want the FTE equivalence of 6.
Mhm.
Okay, and do you want preference or do you want, this is it?
Preference.
So what's a non-preference?
No, a hard stop at 6 employees.
Yeah, period, there's no preference.
I mean, is it possible you wouldn't get enough applicants?
Well, then we can adjust it after the fact, right?
Well, that's what we put the language in here for.
No, I would not adjust it after the fact.
No.
I wouldn't change your application process. Once you go through it, you go through it.
I wouldn't say preference,
Maximum 6-person.
FTE or less.
I mean, I would ask Lori and Dave. I mean, do you think that there's a 7 and up category or 6 and down?
I'd say 6 and down.
I think I gave you the information on that one already. I don't have it in front of me, but there's a lot that is 6 and down.
Yeah, the county, in my experience, is dominant, and the city too is dominated by micro enterprises of 5 or fewer employees. And given now that I've got the floor, given the trauma of a lot of too much of the SBA dollars going to very, very large businesses, I think the more we can err on the side of the smallest businesses, the better.
Okay. So maximum of 6 of full-time employees, full-time equivalent employees.
Yeah.
Okay. We went through the question on the national chains, so we don't need to go through that again. Available amount, $5,000, or should it be less?
I think it should be less. If we had 3,500, we could deal it out to 114 businesses.
Ed, do you have a feeling on that?
I think my preference would be to make it a maximum of 5 or 35, but have the flexibility to have different amount awards and different tiers. You know, again, going back to the tourism grants, very few people get their entire ask, but they'll get something. I just like the idea of having some flexibility.
The problem I have with that is just what we've been going through with Councilor Hoagland. That's hard to justify. It's hard to come back and argue with somebody, you got 4,000 and you got 5,000 because they're hurt more than you are. Personally, I'd rather have a hard number.
I like the idea of the monthly gross income, even though that's harder for a non-lodging facility. But if all you can show is $200 a month loss, why should you get a $5,000 grant?
We probably won't.
I don't think you're going to have a problem with people losing more than $5,000 right now. I think you will find it fairly easy to find 80 businesses that have lost $5,000.
Okay, that's fine.
So I guess my point is, whatever amount you pick, I don't necessarily agree with Ed on the on trying to make a judgment as to somebody gets 5,000 and somebody else only gets 4,000.
It depends on the severity of business loss, right? So if you're at 75% or to 100, we're trying to help the most affected people the best we can with the maximum of $5,000. Because you've lost significant amount of money, 75 to 100%, well, that's what might happen. I mean, I don't know how much businesses people are losing. I don't know that amount. But I can say that, well, makes sense to me that the most affected does get it. And that's why I don't want it to be feelings. It's I don't want to put that in there. Everybody should feel good about this, period. And nobody has this pit in their stomach of like, damn it, I didn't help everybody that I could. Well, of course, but we're here trying, you know, and that's the thing about all of these are people. We're going to stand next to each other in the grocery store in whenever, you know, and go, and they're like, you son of a bitch, this is what you did. It's like, no, look, it's just to try to put it out there for, you know.
So do we have the potential of giving $5,000 grant to some business that didn't lose $5,000?
Possibly.
I don't know that I want to do that.
So I've got 3 options that I'm looking at, and I'll bring back all of them to you. $5,000. I heard $3,500, or up to $5,000, depending on the severity of the impact.
Right. I mean.
Okay. All right. We also have in this 1 grant per business owner. We've already talked about that, so we don't need to go any farther. And then business expenses only. Okay.
I think also what I was saying, okay, so the chamber and the SBDC, I know you said you're going to get back to it, but I think it's really important, as Dave was saying, here's the short-term fix and the long-term fix. And let's do both of those. Yeah, we're going to give you, and let's say the SBDC and the chamber charges $25 a year. Whatever that amount is, you know, the city is going to make sure that you're a bit part of this community both ways. So we're going to give them the money, and then here's the $150 to participate. I don't know. I feel like we're only putting a Band-Aid on this and not giving, and like Dave said, we're not going to give them the long-term. And that's my point too, of like, we're not giving them the long-term. Dave, can you talk about that?
Well, all I was saying was, when you mentioned earlier that maybe chamber membership was a part of this, or SBDC services, I'd like to set SBDC aside just for a second, just because we don't charge for advising. Oh. But the chamber has to be funded, and so I just think that there's something to say for consideration. And again, credit where credit is due, Riley. If I got $5,000, but I was deducted $150 or whatever the dues are for my membership for a year, now you're saying here's your immediate support. Also, here's a year's worth of networking and getting plugged in with the business community, and hence in trying to hedge our bets.
And that's where I was going, right? But you've said it much better than I.
Ron, were you going to check on that legally? Because having worked with unions, I don't know if you can condition it that way.
I will. I'll talk with Apichello.
I'm not comfortable with connecting I mean, the business wants to join the chamber, that's up to them. I don't know if I want my TRT tax money. Apologies, Lori, but you do a wonderful service there, but I don't know that I want to require that this money that we're giving for economic relief go to the chamber. I mean, the chamber can make a case that their existence helped, I don't know, create or helped persuade the city to give back the money in this way. And look, here's a service that the chamber provided, and we do this networking and all this stuff. But I think making it a requirement that makes me uncomfortable.
We're trying to do long-term, we're trying to help businesses, right? And if they provide help to businesses, I don't understand why that would make you uncomfortable.
They get to choose. I think it should be their choice.
Optional. It's optional.
Okay. with the items that are still outstanding on this, you're not, I don't think you're going to be at a point where you can, as a group, recommend this. So what you'll need to do is shift gears a little bit. I'll provide this information to you. I'll provide this information to the rest of the city council, and then you'll probably, during the meeting, you'll need to just express your own preferences and recommendations individually instead of collectively.
Okay.
Good?
Yep. Thanks, Ron. Thanks for putting this together. It's difficult.
Okay, now can I ask just a favor? Ed and Courtney and Tony, can you guys just stay on for a minute?
Sure.
Okay. All right, thanks everybody. Sure appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you guys.
Thanks
Have a
for all
great-
your work.
Have a great
Thanks,
day.
everybody.
Bye.